Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and today I have a tasty little collaboration arranged for you. For those of you who are my subscribers and this video has kind of come out of left field, this video is actually the second part of a two-part collaboration with Reclaimer Gaming, where we both endeavoured to analyse the entirety of the Halo 3 campaign, break it down for all its good and bad points, and give a final word and score for the campaign as a whole. This is most definitely a retrospective look at the Halo 3 campaign, part 1 of which can be found at Reclaimer Gaming's channel, which you can find a link to at the top comment, the description down below, and the little card at the top right. It's entirely up to you how you want to watch this now. You can watch part 2 here, and then circle back to part 1 afterwards, or you can go over to Reclaimer Gaming's channel and watch part 1 first, in which case just pause this video and come back. I'll leave the ball entirely in your court. If, however, you've just come from Reclaimer's Part 1, welcome to Part 2, and with that all said and done, let's pick up where we left off in Part 1 with Floodgate. So we find ourselves in the level Floodgate, which is basically just the storm run backwards. One of the first things we're greeted with is the Arc Portal looming ominously in the sky above us, showing the inky black depths of space at the centre. Once we've taken sufficient time to take in the ambience of this area and how adversely it's been affected by the recently downed Covenant ship, we can then get our basic instructions from Miranda and begin the mission properly. Again, as I previously said, this is basically the storm level ran backwards, but with some notable differences to the campaign level from moment to moment, based on the direct impact crater of the Covenant ship. If you're quick enough at this very start portion, you'll see a flood form try to jump between these two buildings. If you've got a quick enough trigger finger, you can kill that flood form, and it will drop the Fog Skull. The Fog Skull is a modifier skull that, when applied, disables your motion tracker, meaning that you'll miss those eyes in the back of your head. This obviously adds slight additional scoring points when you're doing a playthrough of the campaign with scoring either competitively or cooperatively. If attention is paid to the areas nearby, you can swap out some of your armaments to have more flood-befitting weapons. We all know that the shotgun is deadly efficient against flood forms. It's at this point that we get to see the flood actually finally on Earth. It's worth noting in the lore that the flood infestation of East Africa was a huge event that took place and only actually covered a lot of the happenings up and kept it highly classified, so not a huge amount of people actually understood what was happening. But the reality is, in a slightly later cutscene, when it said that they glassed half a continent, this is not too far from the truth. They had to glass huge portions of the African continent just to try to stop the flood from spreading any further. Again, that old quote, "a single flood spore can destroy a species," is most definitely not too far from the truth. Going through and destroying the flood-infected bodies at least prevents the small infection forms from reanimating the downed corpses. After clearing this area, and once again going back to pick up our Fog Skull for some reason, we then get to one of the most gruesome moments of Halo 3, where we actually see firsthand the infection of a Marine and the rapid deterioration from human to flood combat form. It's interesting to note here that the ambience and the sound effects going on in the area include a pulsing sound, which in this instance can be interpreted as Chief's own heart rate becoming stronger and more pronounced in his ears. It's not that Chief is scared of the flood in any great degree, but the fear that he does feel for them, he simply puts aside and focuses on dealing with the flood firsthand. This is actually a sentiment that is echoed in the book The Flood, and it's little small moments like this in the game, with the throbbing in the ears, so to speak, that allows us to immerse ourselves more fully into the armour of the Chief. After working our way back through the warehouses that we had previously travelled through during the storm, we have the option to pick up a flamethrower or discard it and leave it behind. And rather than taking the gateway into this area that we took originally, we now have to take this small hole and access way through the floor to get back into the area we had previously accessed.
It's not safe. The grave mind, it knows how to.
The clip of Cortana here is echoing the message that is left for him in the recording device left on the downed Covenant ship. Once we make our way through these twists and turns and taking out the flood occupying it in the process, we find ourselves back in the triage area that we saw the injured Marines in the storm. Unfortunately, we are once again confronted by a rather distressing scene of a Marine in full turmoil and traumatic response.
Sliding around beneath their skin. Oh. And then they got up, started to talk. Oh God, their voices. Oh God, no, make them stop. I did them a favor. Yeah, that's it. I helped them. Maybe I need to help myself. Maybe
This Marine used his sidearm to kill his fellow soldiers as they were being infected by the flood and somehow survived this encounter. It's interesting that in this version, in the MCC version of Halo 3, 343 Industries have removed the handgun that the Marine was holding in his hand, probably because at the end of his conversation and trauma response there, he suggested at helping himself, as in using his sidearm on himself. This obviously being quite a mature theme, given that Halo 3 was released with an rated M for mature rating, and of course the newer games and 343's tenure has changed somewhat the certification of the Halo games to be T for teen, meaning that in some circumstances they had to remove certain aspects of the content that were a little too mature for a teen audience, which I think is a massive step in the wrong direction. Nevertheless, back to the gameplay, and we have a conversation between the Arbiter and the Elites here that suggest at the Flood now being significantly more evolved than we've seen them before. Obviously we're going to encounter combat forms, particularly brute combat forms that we haven't really encountered before, but that's just the start of our concerns with the Flood. The crane that you can see here is the same crane from when we were attacking the Scarab in the storm. It's relatively easy to miss because this area has changed significantly since the last time we were here. The argument seemingly being that perhaps this area broke away and fell when the Ark portal opened due to the intense ground tremors, because there's not really any ship debris in this particular area, suggesting towards that the ship hit the floor somewhere nearby and gouged into the ground. That doesn't seem to be the case. And at least as far as the original Halo 3 trailer goes, we did see that when the Ark portal opens, parts of the Earth gave away. After working our way back through the connecting corridors between the two large staged areas, we find our way back at the place that we first fought the anti-aircraft Wraith, now utterly changed by the presence of the crashed CCS-class battlecruiser. It is now that we encounter this new evolved Flood that was previously foreshadowed. These new pure forms are a departure from the reanimated corpses of other Flood forms that we've thus far encountered. Instead, these pure forms are actual direct creations of the Flood superintelligence, constructed of parts of corpses as well as just general Flood biomass. These somewhat tailored and mutating forms of Flood are very situation specific. In this particular instance, we're encountering large tank form pure forms, as well as the ranged forms that climb onto high perches and convert themselves into the ranged form to fire bony shards at us from a distance. Unless you're outfitted with a gravity hammer or a sword, the best thing you can do in these circumstances is try to kill the stalker forms, as they are the weakest and most vulnerable of the Flood pure forms. However, they are notably fast and capable of jumping immense distances. After clearing this area of the pure forms and the combat forms that are still lingering, we gain direct access into the ship to find that it has been entirely taken over by Flood biomass. It's at this point we have our first telepathic connection with the Gravemind.
Do not be afraid. I am peace. I am salvation. I am a timeless chorus. Join your voice with mine and sing victory everlasting.
This telepathic communication is taking place because of our proximity to Flood biomass. At face value, Flood biomass is just large groups of organic matter and biological compounds, but they're also laced with Flood supercells and Flood neurology. And since all Flood matter, even down to a singular spore, can be controlled or influenced by the Gravemind, the central commanding superintelligence of the Flood, even though this downed Covenant ship is not where the Gravemind actually is, we can consider ourselves to be moving through a tertiary biological entity directly connected to the Gravemind. By definition, we're moving through the Gravemind itself. And finally, upon actually picking up the device that contains Cortana, we get one of the most important cutscenes of the entire game. First and foremost, we get an immediate greeting by 343 Guilty Spark, our old arch nemesis from Halo CE, who's now once again turned coat and is working with us once more.
I must act quickly before your construct suffers any further trauma.
Leave her alone.
If we do not take this device to a safe location, somewhere I can make repairs.
On Halo, you tried to kill Cortana. You tried to kill me.
Protocol dictated my response. She had the activation index, and you were going to destroy my installation. You did destroy my installation. Now I have only one function: to help you, Reclaimer, as I always should have done.
Chief is rightly wary of this, but accepts it nonetheless, and it's in the next panning shots that we see the true extent of the devastation, with the elite loyal ships glassing East Africa in a desperate attempt to kill the Flood. It's also this cutscene that we not only see just how awesome Halfjaw is as an elite individual, but also how massive the Shadow of Intent truly is.
Its matrices are highly unstable.
Perhaps one of our technicians.
That will not be necessary.
Chief,
Success!
High Charity, the Prophet's holy city is on its way to Earth, with an army of Flood. I can't tell you everything. It's not safe. The Gravemind, it knows I'm in the system.
It's Cortana referencing her prolonged exposure to the Gravemind, and the toll the Gravemind must be taking on her psychology, which is demonstrated quite clearly in just a moment when Cortana displays distress from the evident logic plague taking its toll on her. And Chief even mirrors this and is visibly distressed by seeing Cortana in this state. And then we get a fascinating interaction between Halfjaw and Lord Hood.
No matter, Oracle. We've heard enough. Our fight is through the portal, with the brutes and the bastard truth.
Fine. We'll remain here. Hold out as long as we can.
Did you not hear? Your world is doomed. A Flood army, a Gravemind, has you in its sights. We barely survived a small contamination.
And you, shipmaster, just glassed half a continent. Maybe the Flood isn't all I should be worried about.
One single Flood spore can destroy a species. Were it not for the Arbitrus Council, I would have glassed your entire planet.
Sir, with respect, Cortana has a solution.
Cortana? Did you see her condition? How damaged she is? She could be corrupted for all we know. Her solution could be a flood trap.
We should go through the portal. Find out for sure.
What we should do, Commander, is understand, clearly, that this is humanity's final stand. Here, at Earth. We go, we risk everything. Every last man, woman, and child. If we stand our ground, we might just have a chance.
No. If your construct is wrong, then the Flood is already won.
I'll find Cortana's solution, and I'll bring it back.
Earth is all we have left. You trust Cortana that much?
Sir. Yes, sir.
This is either the best decision you've ever made or the worst. Hell of it is, Chief. I doubt I'll live long enough to find out which.
Following this, we get a beautiful shot in the hangar bay of the Shadow of Intent, showing the entire frigate the Forward Unto Dawn sat within it, showing that the hangar bay is actually approximately twice the size of a UNSC frigate. We also see weapons being swapped back and forth between the UNSC and the elites of the Shadow of Intent, the beginnings of hopefully a very long alliance between humanity and the Sangheili.
The arc begins with one of Halo 3's best cutscenes. Jumping from the slipspace portal at Voy, we're transported to the Ark, the Forerunner structure that could potentially wipe out the galaxy. The shipmaster and an elite crewman say an iconic meme upon the Halo community.
Brute ships, staggered line, shipmaster, they outnumber us 3-1. Then it is an even fight.
And we're then shown our Pelicans prepped and ready to drop onto the surface, with an absolute banger bopping in the background. As we get towards the surface, the Master Chief decides to show off his sniper rifle to an ODST, I imagine making him slightly wet from the big barrel in his hand, and the Pelican door opens, showing the dusty desert-like sandbox we are yet to explore. Installation 00.
Sorry, what? Is that my cue? Oh, sorry, I misunderstood what was going. You carry on, sorry.
Our objective is the same as the level The Silent Cartographer from Halo CE, as in we need to find the Cartographer. It's a map room with a terminal, giving us access to key locations around the Ark, and it's there that we will uncover the remote activation site for the still operational Halo rings. Departing the Pelican, a Marine points out to us the Milky Way galaxy in the sky.
Check it out, in the sky. Is that...
Hey, focus. We got a job to do.
It gives us a sense of just how far away from home we've travelled, and that this is the most alien atmosphere humans have stepped foot on. At least for a very long time, that is, because Halo's lore goes far deeper than you might think. An ODST shows us a cosy little vantage point, and we start sniping the absolute shit out of any covers in sight. It's clear at this point that this level also has similarities to the Halo CE level, the Truth and Reconciliation, where we also start by Pelican drop-off and a sniper in hand to pick off the enemies from a vantage point. Once they're dealt with, I explore a little in this area. I was always so interested as a kid by this door. It was just so suspicious to me finding a door that clearly could have been cut out and would make no real difference to the game. It stood out like an oasis in the desert. I'd always imagined it being part of some big hidden Easter egg and maybe activating a hidden button somewhere would open it, revealing some buried Forerunner weapon. But unfortunately it never happened, and I kept the Easter egg hunt into Call of Duty World at War. Moving on, we discover that the next area of Covenant this time tried to create another anti-air turret as previously seen at the end of the level The Storm. I 360 no-scoped the brutes and danced with some hunters before eventually making my way through the caves into a small Forerunner facility. It's our first sight of the improved Forerunner art style and it looks glorious. I run past the terminal because I'm too lazy to try read or even comprehend what the Forerunners had written, and watch a longsword crash land further out of sight, a location of which we can actually investigate soon. Some Marines had been waiting here for me with their thumbs up their asses because their Pelican had been shot down as well. He explains that they found a good place for the Forward and to Dawn frigate to land before they crashed, and if I help him recover their vehicles, he can take us to the potential LZ. So of course, I do what's necessary and place some lead gently into the brutes' heads, as well as any grunts that dare challenge my ODSTs, clearing the area and recovering the mongooses by the crash site. But before I can even attempt to jump on one, I'm nearly obliterated by the other brand new brute vehicle known as the Prowler, essentially a brute warthog consisting of a driver, 2 side mounts, and a turret mount. Due to the fact they were over the speed limit, my rocket launcher sent some justice rounds their way and fixed the problem pretty quickly. With Halo 3 Sandbox giving me a choice between either the Prowler or the Mongoose, I'm still content on going for the quad. The fact that I'm going to be driving over the desert in this thing just feels kind of right. Like it was built for these kind of environments. And the plus to the Mongoose is being able to equip one of the ODSTs with my rocket launcher and have him jump on the back, repeating the tactic used against the Scarab in one of the previous levels, The Storm. You effectively become a mobile tank, and it's a lot of fun to drive. The rest of the Marines and ODSTs jump on the vehicles left over, and we start making our way across the rocky ramps and dunes ahead of us. The arc is beautiful. The sunny atmosphere and the open design gives us the open world sandboxy feel, just like the cartographer from Halo CE. This is always where Halo's gameplay shines, especially in vehicular gameplay, and it only gets better the further we go. We find the downed longsword and I get blasted by a chopper.
Fiddle-dee-dee.
We then repeat the process and succeed in killing the brute this time and drive along to our next location. We find the Ark Sentinels fighting back some brutes that trigger the installation's defense mechanisms. Thankfully, these won't attack us because, unlike them, we don't play with tools we don't understand. At least, not without 343 Guilty Spark anyway. Johnson tells us to follow his Pelican to the LZ, where the frigate can lend us a hand in deploying more armour to push through the Covenant's defences and drop off the Monitor. Towards the LZ, more forces line the route ahead, so we deal with them swiftly, thanks to our crackshot ODST with the rocket launcher. The anti-air rafes are destroyed, and the Forward and Dawn is cleared for a fast landing. It's always a fun minigame trying to avoid the debris flying towards you, but if you're boring, all of that can be avoided by just hiding in the small caves. The ship's cargo bay opens, revealing to us a Halo Wars amount of vehicles, giving us plenty of choice into what we want to choose for strong-arming our way through the Covenant forces. Of course, we choose the only correct option, that is the Scorpion tank, and Guilty Spark breaks the fourth wall in calling my name.
Shall I help you choose a vehicle, Rick? This one seems in very good condition.
The soundtrack hits with a sense of we can all do this together, and it motivates us to plough through anything that lies ahead. It's a pretty awesome moment, and the Marine comments on just how effective a Scorpion tank really is.
Tank beats Ghost. Tank beats Hunter. Tank beats everything. Oh man, I can do this all day.
We circle back to the sealed door, and Spark opens it only partially, forcing us to walk through. We discover the Sentinel beam for the first time in this Halo game, and the design is almost the same as it was in Halo 2. Besides maybe more polygons or something, I don't know, I'm not a fucking game designer. The game kind of tricks you here because after only a small skirmish in the tank, if you weren't paying attention to the Marines on the comms, you think it's abandoned, but when you make it further inside, there's a bridge that needs activating for all the Marines waiting in their armour to get across, because they used us as a tool. We of course hit the switch and let them roll through, meeting them on the other side. Straight away, the fighting has already begun, and the Marine generously offers us his Gorse Warthog. Without thanking him, we take it, and start giving the Covenant a very hard time.
Die! Die! Die!
We rally back up with the armoured platoon of Marines, and form up to push down the choppers, ghosts, and wraiths. It really feels like a battle you'd see in Halo Wars, and seeing this much carnage on screen creates this scale that you're not the only one making dents in the enemy forces. The Scorpions behind us do a good job dealing with the heavy enemy armour, but the scale of the battle becomes even bigger when the Scarab finally appears. This area is perfectly set up to dive in and out of cover with the Gorse mounted Warthog. We jump in and out of cover between rocks, trying to swipe its legs before being able to mount it and destroy the Scarab at its core. Or we can do the cinematic way that takes far longer and attempt to use the clearly ramped roof of the structure centre of the area. It's nice that the game gives us more than one type of opportunity, just like the mission The Storm, and always helps add to replayability. We kill the mechanical spider, and the elite shipmaster compliments us on our brute killing efficiency.
Not bad, Spartan. I saw that explosion from orbit.
The path ahead is almost clear, and now we just have to enter the facility that houses the cartographer. The Arbiter, after having a long nap on the Shadow of Intent, finally decides to join us, and a Marine gets stung by an overcautious, guilty Spark, perhaps foreshadowing what he may do later in the game. He opens the door, and we clear the rooms out that eerily resemble the layout of the silent cartographer back in Halo CE. Just another nice detail that only sharp-eyed fans would pick up on. I deploy my newly discovered equipment, an auto turret, which melts a jackal in seconds. It's a highly useful piece of equipment, and one I'd probably label S on a tier list. I also assassinated a brute, in which Guilty Spark commented,
Tremendous!
which gave me a chuckle. Once they're dealt with, we find the cartographer. A beautiful scenery placed in the background, and the next cutscene plays. We actually discover that Spark assumed that Ark was a shield installation. Shield installations are planet-sized worlds but inverted. A thick metal surface seen from the outside with a livable atmosphere on the inside. He was unaware of the information about the Ark, so that if the Flood ever captured him, they wouldn't find it. Spark also goes on to explain where the Prophet is, and that he has a barrier protecting him, which we need to disable. There's also a part in this cutscene where he acts surprised. Chief asks what it is, and the Arbiter interrupts him because of a phantom.
What is it?
Phantom!
This leads people off the trail to believe he was just surprised by the dropship, when in truth, this is where he would learn of the replacement Halo being created at the Ark's core. The one that Chief destroyed in Halo CE. Spark's replacement ring. It's a detail that definitely went over a lot of people's heads at the time, even mine, but after countless replays through the campaign, it becomes pretty obvious. We're forced to flee the scene. Having the information we need, we make our way down a floor to the evac site. On our way, we're ambushed by a pack of camouflage brutes equipped with the new Mauler revolver, a brute weapon. It would essentially become the brute's shotgun, only unlike the human shotgun, this could be dual-wielded, making it an excellent addition to the sandbox, but only under certain close-quarter circumstances. Dealing with them, our last battle is laid out neatly for us. A brute chieftain tells his men to stand aside, whilst you and the brute then fight it out one-on-one. It shows that even the brutes have a sense of honour amongst the battlefield, just as much as the elites. It actually gives me a newfound respect for the brutes at the time, knowing they're not just mindless steroid monkeys.
No!
Anyway, we slap him out of the scene and molest his mates until they either die or fall and die, leaving the area clear for an evac. Johnson flies down and nearly terminates the Sentinels that have most likely been prioritised for the construction of the replacement Halo, and we leave, walking onto the Pelican in the most nonchalant yet badass way ever.
Bum ba bum bum bum. There seriously isn't a more iconic theme than this one. Anyway, this level starts with a very silent cartographer approach to a beach. which is entirely done on purpose, as the opening of this level is supposed to harken back to the Silent Cartographer from Halo CE. Obviously there's some slight narrative differences, but ultimately it still translates to the same. We approach a beachhead, we're dropped off, and we have to fight up the beach to clear the area.
Earth. Every being in the galaxy. Halo will kill them all.
It's Miranda once again being a very cheery individual, but in no way original, because she literally just, almost word for word, repeated what she and Chief spoke about in Crow's Nest, but we'll politely ignore that for now. We get a choice of whether or not to use a Warthog with a little bit of extra firepower or the Mongoose for speed of attack. Personally, I like the Mongoose just because of how fast you can go up and then come back down the hill there afterwards. You don't necessarily have to focus on killing every enemy along the way because you can just breeze past them. But for the completionists among you, I recommend the Warthog, at least then you can lay some heavy lead on them. This mission is threefold. There are 3 separate towers that need to be taken offline to drop the shields that surround the Citadel. The next step is that you need to move on the Citadel, get inside and stop Truth from firing the rings, and the last being that you need to get out of the Citadel and get clear when the Flood eventually arrive. Oh, by the way, spoilers. Come on, you already knew that. Once clearing the vehicles and foot soldiers from outside of this first tower, we make our way inside, where again we fight through a few select rooms of Covenant forces and make our way to the apex of this room where we can access the lift. Again, there are little tricks that you can learn after years of playing that allow you to bypass a large majority of these engagements. This particularly helps on legendary runs and legendary All Skulls on runs. Upon getting to the top, there are a couple of brute captains, a couple of brute miners, and a brute chieftain with a gravity hammer to be killed before we can actually take this first tower offline. Peekaboo.
Chief, find the tower controls and shut it down. Good work, Chief. That's 1. The Arbiter should be just about to... That's 2. It's all up to Johnson's team now. Get back outside, Chief. Wait for transport.
With the failure of the 3rd barrier to fall, we realise that Sergeant Johnson has evidently encountered some problems and we're going to need to go and achieve that objective for him. After promptly making our way back out of the tower and to the top side again, we can get into a Mongoose and speed back to the beachhead with all the grace, precision and control of a drunk. Doesn't change the fact that rocketing down this hill at 1,000,000 miles an hour is still one of the funnest things to do on the early part of this level.
Sir, got a flight of birds that need an escort. Take the Hornet, get those Pelicans safely to the 3rd tower.
Having made it to the bottom, ideally without either rolling it or shitting your pants, you then load up into a Hornet and get the opportunity to take the fight to the Covenant forces dominating the air. The Hornet is a fantastic VTOL aerial craft and a powerful answer to the Banshees. After clearing the skies, we arrive at Tower 3 where we find it heavily defended, and once we take out these defences, we're cleared to land, disembark, and then take on the brutes that are still holding the inner portions of this 3rd tower. We finally make it to the lift, and upon reaching the top, we're confronted with yet another brute chieftain, but this one is a gold chieftain with a turret and several stealth brutes. These brutes are in active camouflage and are carrying fire grenades, which will come in immensely useful in just a moment.
Now, Prophet, your end has come.
Hi, Charity. By the gods, brace for impact!
Yes, once again the Flood had followed us to Installation 00. It's been since explained that the reason that High Charity somehow managed to completely bypass completely infecting Earth is that it didn't actually stop by Earth and use the Arc Portal. The Gravemind altered the slipspace drives within High Charity to be more efficient and made the jump himself from within the galaxy to the Ark in record time by all appearances. Nevertheless, after fighting through the flood to get back outside, we finally get Allied forces and full reinforcements, and in this case we get a tank. We then begin our final charge on the Citadel, moving through the barrier wall and along the snowy cliffs, clearing out what is widely accepted to be the remaining forces of the Covenant. The elites had done strikingly well in destroying most of the Covenant forces in orbit above Installation 00. After once again being given a Hornet, we can mount one final attack on 2 Scarabs that drop from orbit to play defense for the Citadel and the Prophet of Truth, and upon taking those down, 343 Guilty Spark and the Arbiter arrive and grant us access to the Citadel itself. Meanwhile, inside, Johnson, full knowing that he can activate the Halo rings as a human, is trying to goad the brutes into killing him. Truth can see through this ploy, however, and stops the brutes from doing so. It's at this point that Miranda arrives to attempt to save Johnson, but this then presents another individual available to activate the rings. Johnson then somewhat insists that she kill him and then herself, thereby denying the Prophet of Truth the ability to activate the rings. This backfires, however, when Miranda is killed and Johnson, grief-stricken, submits to Truth's will. Upon getting inside of the Citadel, we reach the top floor and come into contact with the Flood once more, but this time the Flood have a tentative alliance with the elites and with the Chief, knowing that the Chief, as a Reclaimer, is one of the only people close enough and in the fortunate enough position to be able to stop the firing of the Halo Ray and thus the extinction of all life. The Flood then vow to assist clearing the path between the Citadel's opening and the control panel.
So far are we along the path that I must stray to hear the thunder. Stop the rings. Save the rest.
We then get one of the most poignant moments of the entire game. Truth is nearly defeated on the floor. The Arbiter approaches, ready to finally end the battle that he began at the start of Halo 2. Chief moves over to disactivate the Halo array, while Truth slowly submits to a slow infection by the Flood. Truth, nevertheless, holds on to his control of his own body just long enough for the Arbiter to slay him. Now, with this threat fully averted, the Flood revert to their previous modus operandi and turn on the living, Arbiter and Chief being the first of his targets. Johnson manages to pilot the Pelican and get clear, and Chief desperately attempts to hold on and carry the Arbiter with him, but a tentacle from the Gravemind knocks them free, causing them to crash back down onto the control deck. From here, they fight their way all the way back through the Citadel and drop down an escape hatch that leads to an overlook. This overlook retracts a door and reveals a new Halo has been created.
Replacement. The ring you destroyed.
When did you know?
Just now. But I had my hopes.
343 Guilty Spark reveals himself, and the motives of all involved finally align for the final activation of the Halo. Chief knows exactly where to find the Index, and knows that he must travel to High Charity, while 343 Guilty Spark oversees final preparations. Reclaimer Gaming, I hand over to you.
Flying in on a Banshee, reminiscent of Halo CE's The Maw, we return to the now over-infested High Charity. After watching it fall to the Ark's surface, we now have a chance to finally be reunited with Cortana, if she's still functional, that is. It's pretty obvious by now that of course she is, and all those messages wouldn't have been for nothing, because my god it would be depressing after all of this and finally trying to recover her that she just turns up destroyed. We drop in with a shotgun, giving us a useful weapon to fight the Flood. It's much appreciated because assault rifles and battle rifles are the last thing we want in this scenario. The environment is grotesque. The only glorious city of royal purples and brilliant lights was now corrupt and twisted into what can only be described as a writhing tumour. The floors and walls are enveloped into the mass. Straight away you can tell this level isn't like the others. You feel like you want to get out rather than explore what Bungie had built, which is actually good considering it's a Flood themed level. You feel somehow claustrophobic, like the walls might try to ingest your body, and feel watched as if the Flood might just form through the mass into pure forms and attack you at any second. The atmosphere is done well, but I have to be honest, I hate this level. Maybe it's because it all looks the same and it's a nightmare to find your way around at times, but it just drags. It plays sort of similarly to Halo CE's The Library. There's no major difference in art style and you're constantly pushing for enemies just trying to reach a certain area. It's super linear and you can explore a little and find a better weapon at certain points, sure, but it's hard to even want to. I'll say it right now, this is 100% the worst level in the entire game. It's just a little too repetitive. I'd be more pleased if there was some more open areas like the level Gravemind in Halo 2, being able to see the thriving city in the background. It would have been so cool to see it again, on an angle due to its crash landing and covered in greenish yellow across the landscape, but alas, it just wasn't meant to be. Your objective is to run through the Flood, get to Cortana, and get back out. Besides destroying those 3 generators later, it's just a run and survive level. In a way it's a nice change of pace, being on the back foot, running away and just trying to complete your objective rather than clear the enemies out, but I hate it, and I feel like there could have been more to this level, or maybe just a better way to rescue Cortana. We start barging our way through the Flood, and coming across a frankly naughty looking door. Yeah, we all know what it looks like.
Nice.
I thrust through it, and the Gravemind stops me for a chat, calling me child of my enemy. It's a deep lore reference to the fact that humans were made by precursors, and that our ancestors fought off the Flood millennia ago. I won't go too deep into it here, but for lore enthusiasts, it's a nice touch in the dialogue. It's here where the level starts to get creepy. Cortana's messages are now much more jumbled and inconclusive. It's clear that the Gravemind had damaged and influenced or even corrupted her down to the core. The Flood was known for being able to infect AI in a method known as Logic Plague, back before the Halo array was activated. Again, I'm delving into deeper lore, but it's just good to explain what this means to the not-so-lore-savvy fans. High Charity's signature designs are barely visible. The cancerous mass has gone deep into the city, making most rooms and areas unrecognisable. I have to admit though, after going through this level, it did make me want to replay Halo 2's High Charity level, to try find the locations I'd later return to here. The Flood ambushes me here, and I can either struggle in fighting off the Horde, or proceed to the next area, rushing past large numbers. I of course choose the latter, and enter another questionable looking door. The Gravemind tries to persuade the Chief that he's already taken Cortana for himself, and adopted her into the Flood's fold, or mass.
You came for her. We exist together now. 2 corpses in 1 grave.
But because we are the Master Chief, we ignore the tentacle zombie and carry on our way. It slowly gets creepier as more of Cortana's jumbled words echo through our head. Likely the Gravemind using her voice to deter the Master Chief. The horror vibe is once again revisited. Just like in the previous games, there was always some sort of experience or particular level that expanded into the horror themes. In Halo CE, it had 343 Guilty Spark, and in Halo 2, it had Gravemind. It's an underlying staple in the Halo franchise to include these types of experiences. It's just unfortunate that this is the level in Halo 3 that falls flat. Another room filled with corpses lies ahead, and I swiftly brush through, but not before grabbing an energy sword on the way out, giving me that edge in close quarter combat. I drop down into another section of High Charity, finding a familiar style door. More Flood away in a slightly more open room, with Pure Forms deciding they want to try their luck against John Halo with a lightsaber. I cut them up like slicing Darth Maul in half, and then get frustrated slightly at trying to find the exit to push forward. Halo has admittedly always been bad at this, because even when the objective is clear, the path sometimes isn't. It's what makes replayability for some of these levels that much more annoying. Even after constant playthroughs of this game over the years, I still forget where to go, especially in places like this. Luckily, I do find the very obscure exit, and manage not to cry after being molested by alien zombies. The level continues to repeat the tight corridors mixed with open areas that act as a sort of puzzle trying to find the exit, as well as the often angry voicemail from the Gravemind.
Hello?
Right, I'll tell you what, you fat little cunt.
What I did find interesting is that almost every time the level opened up, there was often an active camouflage unit lying around. It's almost as if the developers knew this wasn't a very desired method of gameplay, and gave the player a chance to escape combat momentarily whilst trying to find the exit unimpeded. At least they were self-aware of the mistake to correct themselves with the way to tackle the Flood. But I do wish they changed the entire level instead of giving us some equipment to make it just more manageable. I'm not angry, Bungie, just a little disappointed. Although I have to side with Bungie with the fact that I'd rather fight the Flood than Prometheans. Sorry Promethean fans, I guess I'm just old. Escaping through another forbidden hole, the Gravemind tries once again to persuade Chief he has Cortana under his wing. Of course we don't listen and put our helmet speaker system on mute.
Oh, you've gone all quiet.
Another familiar area is opened up to us, this time showing us how the Flood spread around the chasm. A machine blows up nearby, which later becomes our objective before leaving this place. I know I said I kind of despise this level, but I fucking adore this cutscene. Marty O'Donnell hits us with some piano feels, and we're finally reunited with our partner that stood by us through this entire mess of Halo arrays, Flood, and Covenant prophets.
You know me. When I make a promise.
You keep it. I do know how to pick 'em.
Lucky me. Do you still have it?
The activation index from the first Halo ring. A little souvenir I hung on to, just in case. Got an escape plan?
Thought I'd try shooting my way out. Mix things up a little.
She says a line that yet again calls back to Halo CE, and we're ready to get the fuck out of here.
Keep your head down. There's 2 of us in here now, remember?
Zombie Squidward is audibly angry, and we smile as we walk out with what we came to receive. And now it's time to destroy this place for a second time. The machine we saw combust earlier was one of 4 reactors. We need to destroy the remaining 3, hopefully burning the Flood for good. It takes no time, and thanks to my trusty energy sword, we slice through them in no time, and make our way to the closest exit. The Arbiter awaits us at the evac site, most likely worried that his little human buddy had been killed or captured, and came prepared with a World War II era weapon to purify the infestation. I pat him on the arse and we leave in the Pelican, finally ending the level Cortana. The survivors from the Battle of the Ark, both human and elites, are extracted back to Earth through slipspace in the Shadow of Intent, leaving only the Master Chief, Cortana, the Arbiter, Johnson, and 343 Guilty Spark. It's down to them now, to activate the unready Halo ring, shattering it, and hopefully the Ark, into pieces. This would truly be finishing the fight, and after putting an end to the Covenant, the Flood was the only real danger that remained. Chief crashes a perfectly good Pelican softly into some snow, with the Arbiter on his 6. It seems that Halo 3 is just a game full of callbacks to Halo CE, because now we find ourselves in a very, very similar area to Halo CE's assault on the control room. And that's because this Halo is an exact replacement for the ring we blew up in CE. It's the same place, just unfinished. We have to fight our way through to the control room once again. We trek through the beautiful revamped environment and find a small area to explore if we're perceptive enough to spot it. It leads us to one of the familiar rooms seen before in CE, but with a terminal inside. I know I haven't been showing any terminals during my playthrough, mainly out of laziness, but this one I always enjoyed coming to. I like that you could miss this entire room if you didn't bother exploring the world that the devs had created for you. It rewards the fans that really enjoy the games that have been built for them. I access the terminal and make my way back, acting like a dunce and falling to my death rather than going back the way I came, and then continue with the level. The Gravemind sends out flood dispersal pods, although I'm not entirely sure where exactly they came from, considering that he had no ships in the skies. I start fighting my way to the top, repeating what most flood levels are about, and just running whilst fighting rather than wiping out a section and moving on. Johnson reveals where he landed by blasting his Spartan laser across the cliffs, and we eventually meet at the top after fighting off a ridiculous amount of flood. Bungie always managed to make the flood worse by adding too many of them, but I suppose they live up to their name in doing so. Johnson jumps down a cliff the size of 2 houses and walks it off. The only way I can be reasonable about this is by saying his Orion augmentations made his body able to cope with such a drop. We then move through the door and down the familiar corridors to find the control room. Its projection of the halo around the room shows a partially built installation. It's a nice touch. Every time I saw these projections, it always made me want to go explore the rest of the halo. Looking at all the different islands and continents, it's a shame we only got such a small portion of the ring in Halo Infinite. The Arbiter and I wait at the door, whilst Johnson goes ahead and activates the control room with Cortana. Reasonably so that the best soldiers cover the door from the flood, while Johnson sorts out the terminal, but we later see how Chief blames himself for not being the one to do it. The Monitor, with his newfound happiness and joy of his new installation, feels forced to take action and protect it, firing at Johnson. It was built into him as a protocol to protect this installation and activate it only when necessary and ready. But he wasn't ready.
I see now that helping you was wrong. You are the child of my makers, inheritor of all they left behind. You are Forerunner. But this ring is mine.
We're forced to fight Guilty Spark, and after borrowing Johnson's Infinity Battery Spartan laser, we destroy him for good. Or did we? After Miranda's death, this was the absolute last straw. After all we did, and all that fighting, and he wasn't going to make it, felt like a bittersweet end. But damn did it make a good ending to a game.
I'm getting you out of here.
No, you're not. Don't let her go. Don't ever let her go. Send me out. With a bang.
Chief, I'm so sorry.
Emotions set high. I fought with everything I had through the Flood, and now hostile Sentinels. The Arbiter following, as we make our way to Johnson's Warthog. The entire Halo is collapsing in on itself, due to being fired when unready. The activation combusting itself, and beginning the end of the Halo. After only a short stretch of relentless fighting, we made it to the Warthog. And the best moment in gaming history as we know it commences. The Warthog run to end all Warthog runs, and unfortunately, quite literally, since this was the last one we ever got, we are forced to absolutely bomb it. The ring itself collapsing beneath us, Sentinels and Flood fighting each other, occasionally firing at us. The Arbiter on the turret firing storms of bullets, and Marty O'Donnell's most legendary soundtrack. This was gaming at its peak in 2007, and you were without a doubt 100% lying if you said that when you played this for the first time you weren't sweating and screaming at your screen, praying to make it to the Forward Unto Dawn in time. All while Cortana is letting you know how far the Halo's activation charges. There's more pressure here than there is in the bottom of the ocean. The plates below you shake and collapse. Explosions everywhere as the road you're driving on itself is collapsing, falling into the void. The pain and stress of falling out of the Warthog and rushing to jump back in feels like shaving minutes off your life expectancy, pushing the thumbstick so hard forward that it feels like it starts to go numb. You can see the ship, the Forward Unto Dawn, your only salvation of this imploding nuclear ring. The adrenaline is overwhelming at this point. You just have to get to the ramp and pray you've picked up enough speed to fly off and just make it into the hangar. This is it. This is all you have, and...
Chief, jump! Floor it! Right into the hangar! You make it.
You roll into the hangar, landing hard on the hangar floor. The ship starts to move, and the Arbiter and the Chief are forcibly split up by a rolling Scorpion tank blocking the way to the bridge. Chief activates the console in the hangar, placing Cortana into the controls, which she immediately engages and pilots the ship out of orbit and towards the portal back to Earth. But then a Warthog loses grip and hits Chief hard, knocking him down to the edge of the hangar. But because he's the most badass Spartan alive, he punches into the hangar floor, slowing him down and giving him enough grip to stop falling. The Scorpion falls behind him, narrowly missing him, and he climbs back up towards Cortana's console and gives us a cinematic shot. I only hope we one day see it completely remastered in the future, because this is absolutely gorgeous. And after all that, we finally hear the Master Chief's name for the first time. John. Halo 3 was revolutionary at the time. It was the game most developers looked up to, in terms of achievement and what it accomplished. Even if you didn't play on an Xbox, you heard of Halo 3. It was a worldwide phenomenon, and it set the bar for what was possible for that generation of consoles. There was a reason Sony would try punch out its so-called Halo killers and fail spectacularly. Although, Haze kinda slapped, I'm not gonna lie about that. It's just a shame that in this day and age, Halo isn't at the top of the FPS food chain anymore, or even anywhere near the middle for that matter. 343 have done all they can for now, and it's honestly been a disappointment mostly. But I'm hoping that one day we'll see another Halo, and one that matches up to the legend of Halo 3. Halo 3 to me was never my favourite of the franchise, but that's not to say I didn't replay the story over and over again, or mess around on Forge and multiplayer for hours. Its multiplayer, soundtracks, gameplay, characters, and story narrative kept me coming back even to this day. When people look back at gaming in 2007, along with some pretty strong contenders like Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Assassin's Creed, this one, I imagine, most will recall with the fondest of memories. So I'm giving Halo 3 my own ratings based on what I previously mentioned. Starting with gameplay, I'm giving Halo 3 an 8 out of 10. I enjoy the feel of its combat and in-game mechanics, such as the equipment system. Being able to deploy extra devices on the battlefield added an extra layer to the encounters you'd come across, such as a bubble shield against sniper jackals, or a trip mine against advancing forces. However, I did feel like the Master Chief felt a little floatier in this game. It does in the previous two for sure, but this one somehow made it feel like I was wearing a suit of helium. The difficulty was also a bit of a letdown, with this game's version of Legendary being far too easy compared to Halo 2. It's clear Bungie wanted to appease the fans complaining about how hard Halo 2's Legendary was compared to CE. I think if they went with CE's Legendary difficulty, it would have been a nice balance. Halo CE's was just right, whereas Halo 2's was too hot, and Halo 3's too cold. But that's as far as I can go really with complaints, because Halo 3 still felt just as fun and addictive as the last two in terms of its overall gameplay and physics. The sound design in Halo 3 is lacking heavily for me, and I have to give it a 4 out of 10. I could go on forever, but instead I'll give you my favourite example. The assault rifle sounds too weak. It always became a turn-off, and something I'd usually just try to avoid. I don't get how anyone could pass it off as a real assault rifle firing. Maybe it's just me, but they definitely could have done better, which they had done with Halo CE's version. Maybe I'm being uber picky about this one, but I just can't get over that horrible sound. Next is the soundtrack, and I don't think this one needs any explanation really. 10 out of 10. Marty's tracks will forever be up there above the rest of gaming's finest. Art style. This deserves a solid 9 out of 10 for me. Maybe it's just my bias for Halo 2 being my favourite, but I think Halo 3 lacked slightly without the ancient structures we'd see on Delta Halo, or the dark metals and accent gold colours we'd see laid in between 4 and Alloy. But other than what it lacks, Halo 3's art style is gorgeous, especially from upgrading from the original Xbox to the 360. Next is its sandbox, and this is probably the biggest at the time in terms of variety. I don't think there's anything missing in Halo 3 that CE and 2 has, and with the addition of Spiker SMGs, spike grenades, gravity hammers, it feels like a whole new set has been added due to the brutes being top dog now. What's even better is that they all have a place in Halo 3. They're all used for certain situations, either in multiplayer or campaign. It just works. If I was comparing this with other Halos such as Halo 5, however, I'd choose Halo 5 just because of its variety. So as much as I want to give it a 10 out of 10, I'm gonna have to give it a 9 out of 10. And finally, we have the story and the writing itself. From start to finish, everything about this game was perfect. We got to see returning characters, how they evolved from the previous games or how they react to certain situations, as well as their conclusions in the Halo universe. Almost every cutscene made the hair on my arm stand up, and watching a brotherhood grow between Chief and the Arbiter was beyond what I expected at the time. The story progressed perfectly, giving us a sense of ending the war for good, and sacrificing everything to finally put a stop to this. From Earth to the Ark, and finally stopping the Covenant and the Flood, we managed to barely escape with our lives. I could honestly go on for hours as to just why Halo 3 had the best story in terms of plot, but this video honestly would be days long. Halo 3's story writing and plot is 10 out of 10. If you agree or disagree, be sure to leave a like in the comments on the video, because I'd love to hear what everyone else thought of Halo 3 during its heyday. Now I know Installation will be adding an outro here, but before he does, I just want to say thank you to him for allowing me such an opportunity to work with him. He's been nothing but a pleasure to collaborate with, and I feel truly privileged that he went out of his way to put up with me and give me a potential viewer boost on my channel. It's a gracious thing to do for someone with such a small ambitious channel. So again, thank you Mr. 00. I'm gonna now shamelessly plug myself here by saying if you want to see more videos like this, then head over to my channel, Reclaimer Gaming. And if you want to stick around, make sure to subscribe. And if you aren't subscribed to Installation, then I'll hunt you down and force feed you random facts about Halo 3. So make sure to do that. Alright, I will leave you all alone now. Peace.
Yes, Reclaimer Gaming, I was going to put an outro here, but you so succinctly wrapped things up, you've left me with very little for me to elaborate on further. I have to agree with your scoring for the different aspects of Halo 3's gameplay, as you indubitably covered all the major points I would have made myself, and as such, from my perspective at least, sets it above contestation. Your bespoke matriculation of the campaign has been a delight to behold, and you've exercised it with fastidious efficiency. It's been most mellifluous to listen to. In short, excellent work, I agree, and keep it up. As Reclaimer said, if you're not subscribed to him, be sure to pop across to his channel and give him a sub. If for some reason you're watching this part 2 without already seeing part 1, part 1 just so happens to be posted over on Reclaimer Gaming's channel, so, you know, you got some catching up to do. Myself and Reclaimer Gaming have worked together a couple of times now, and I foresee many more in the future. It was my absolute pleasure and privilege to collaborate with you, and finally, rather than echo my own outro, I'll just curtly tip my hat to you and say, thanks for watching. If I could respectfully ask, if you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Hit this video with a like if you enjoyed, and if not, it's not a problem. And be sure to pop a comment below to throw me an idea on what you want to see next. Massive thanks to my awesome patrons, Spartan10148, the Metarch of my facility, Falcon, Prophet, Leon, Sylphia, Mikhail, and Irrefutable, the monitors of the array, Darian, Flaming Halo, Cameron, Spartan0137, the Cave Potato, Andrew, Shia, Dakota, and Ghost, my diligent sub-monitors, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers, and all other patrons who have supported the channel and helped keep the domain operational. Huge props and recognition to Todd Morrison, Spartan137, Wesley Stuckey, and Jacob Kemp for jumping on as Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members. You guys are epic. Shout out to John for reasons. And if you want to help support the channel and score yourself tons of perks and merch, head over to Patreon or consider becoming a YouTube member. Links, as ever, are in the description. Much love. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.